So let's start with where America is right now. We're watching, as we speak, major riots in Kenosha, Wisconsin. We've seen major riots in Seattle. We've seen major riots in Portland, in LA, in Washington, D.C., in New York City, in Chicago. Virtually every major city, all Democratic governed, has broken into extraordinary levels of rioting and looting. The media have informed us that all of this is apparently a good thing, that this is changing America in a positive way. Barack Obama suggested at the DNC that the protesters are really doing something wonderful, and the media have conflated the protesters with the rioters and with the looters. So I want to get your overall opinions, first of all, on the Black Lives Matter movement, because it seems to me that Black Lives Matter can mean three separate things, and there's been an attempt to conflate all of them. One, the inarguable proposition that black people matter. Second, the idea that Black Lives Matter as an organization is good, which seems crazy. And third, that America is systemically racist and evil. And I've yet to see exactly how the Black Lives Matter movement, which seems to stand for both the organization and the idea that America is evil, how is that making America better? Do you believe that what's going on right now in America and has been going on since the death of George Floyd has made America better in any way?
No, I mean, I think I've kind of made myself a staunch adversary of the Black Lives Matter movement. It is the antithesis of everything that I believe in as an American, first and foremost. And no, yeah, they're operating under the guise of something that's common sense. Black Lives Matter, and they're doing nothing to prove or to show that Black Lives matter to them because they don't care about Black lives. We know that all across America, in major cities, Black crime rate has gone up, Black homicide rate has gone up. Black people are dying because of Black Lives Matter activism. People burning down and looting Black neighborhoods, taking away Black jobs. So I hate everything to do with Black Lives Matter, and I have used my platform and my voice to speak out against what is ultimately a big lie, right? This is all built upon the idea that Black Americans are being gunned unarmed by a police officer. We're just peacefully, doing our business, and a police officer sees us and they come up to us and they want to shoot us and they want to kill us. And that's a lie. If you are genuinely concerned about Black lives, if I was going to be fearful in America, I would be more afraid of a Black person, a Black male, a Black perpetrator than I would be of a white person or a white police officer. Going by the statistics, we kill our own people way faster than any other person. I actually say this, and it's controversial. If you are truly, sincerely a white supremacist in America, the best thing you could do is do nothing and let Black America tend to itself. Because what we do to ourselves, right, when left unattended to ourselves, is way worse when you look at the statistics than allowing any other group to come in and try to do anything to us. And that's including, of course, police officers who are not killing Black Americans for no reason.
Okay, so the main pitch, it seems, of the Democratic Party these days is that America is systemically racist. According to the 1619 Project, America was rooted in racism. America's a 400-year story of nothing but the foundations of racism being carried out in every aspect of American life. So how much do you think that racism is actually an obstacle to Black Americans living today? Not in 1960 when Jim Crow, not in 1860 when slavery was a thing, but today in 2020 America.
It's not at all an obstacle to Black Americans today. It is just, there is no systemic racism. There is no law. There is nothing that says that I can't do something as a Black person that you can do. So it's completely false. What we're really talking about is the fact that people want to absolve themselves of personal responsibility, and we're being helped. If there's anything that's systemic in America today, it's white guilt. And that's the biggest problem that we have in America today is white guilt. It's been institutionalized, it's been politicized, politicians, white people feeling bad for themselves, and therefore allowing people, allowing Black people and white people alike, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, to run around and act like toddlers, right? So there's an emotional immaturity that is happening in Black America, and is spawned from the education system, which shapes you from the time that you are in kindergarten to believe that because you're Black, you can't in America. When you keep telling a child over and over again they can't because they won't, right? They will begin to believe in their own futility. And this is the thing that I try to conquer, right? I try to go out there and I try to speak and I try to say the problem, if you want to talk about anything systemic, it's that white people keep allowing this false narrative to be perpetuated and won't allow Black Americans to get up onto their own 2 feet. And that really stems from, I would say, the mid-1960s, where Black America sort of took a shift away from the peaceful civil rights into this more, hardcore, militant Black civil rights of burning down your neighborhoods and looting and rioting because they didn't want to take steps to be personally responsible.
Well, what do you make of the argument, and I know that you cover it some in your book Blackout, the argument that was made by LBJ and still made by Democrats today, that one of the big problems is that historic racism is built into the system such that people are starting from behind the 8 ball. That if you look at the broad history of the United States, that Black Americans were discriminated against for the vast majority of America's history, really only alleviated legally in the 1960s and 1970s. And even beyond then, there were informal structures of racism. And therefore, that Black Americans are starting off inherently behind sort of the starting line. LBJ suggested for example, that it would not be proper to simply remove all barriers to entry, you're still leaving people who are so far behind that they can never catch up. And that just wouldn't be appropriate to say, okay, now you're free to live your lives when they've already been systematically deprived of resources that other people have had in the United States.
Look, nobody will debate the fact that Black Americans were oppressed in America for a long time. The problem is that, and you're talking about LBJ's Howard University speech, where he said, we need to fix this, fair. We need to give Black people full freedom. We're getting rid of Jim Crow. Great, all of these things. And then he did the worst thing ever, which is he assigned white guilt to everybody and said, but it's not enough to just give them their freedoms. We all have to get involved and we have to do this and we have to do that. What I can say to you is that there is no group that has ever lagged behind another group that has gotten ahead with handouts. You have to at some point do the hard work, right? So let's say I've been illiterate because I grew up in a Black America where I wasn't allowed to read. I'm not going to learn to read by you pretending I can read. Eventually, I'm going to have to learn to read myself. And this is sort of when all of these programs that are meant to instill equality, which are fundamentally racist in and of themselves, right? Like allowing more Black people to get into schools, which hurts Black America. These affirmative action practices, which was started by LBJ in this initiative for white people to feel guilty enough to just allow Black people to be given accolades and scholarships that they don't deserve. It has harmed Black America over time because at the end of the day, you know the information or you don't. You can do it or you cannot. And here's a great example. Look at the areas in which Black Americans actually excel in. What are the areas we excel in? Sports, right? Did LeBron James become LeBron James because every time he scored a basket, we pretended it was 4 points? Of course he didn't get it. He did it because he did the hard work. He went after school every day, whatever it was, he practiced his game, and LeBron James became LeBron James because he did the work and he put in the work. So the areas that we excel in, disprove the idea that the areas that we lag behind, we're going to get ahead by somehow just giving handouts. We have to do the work.
This is a point Shelby Steele has made specifically with regard to basketball, suggesting that you don't say to a kid who's unable to dribble, well, if we give you this handout or that handout, you're going to learn to dribble. We say, okay, now you need to learn to dribble.
Right.
And that is the only way that anybody gets ahead of any color or in any point in American life. So how did you personally make the transition? Because you didn't always believe this stuff. In fact, when would you say that you became more conservative on these issues?
What's actually funny is that I've always been conservative. I just didn't know that I was a conservative. And I think this is what a lot of Black Americans suffer from. We're raised quite conservatively. And I was definitely raised staunchly conservatively in my grandfather's household. But I didn't care about politics. I was ignorant about politics. So I went through the public school system. And if you come out of the public school system out the other side and you actually learn, if you actually study, you walk out, you get your degree, and you know what? Republicans are racist. Conservatives are racist, and at every point that we've ever gotten ahead, it's because of Democrats. I mean, even LBJ. I mean, it's amazing. They make it seem like he was this wonderful president for Black America because he signed the Civil Rights Act in 1964. He was forced to sign it in 1964. He stepped in, he became president because JFK got killed, and there were massive riots all around. The entire time he was in Senate, for 20 years, he voted against every initiative to help Black Americans. He was a staunch racist. He used the N-word all the time, when he was in the White House, and yet they've rewritten history, and it's disappeared. So we learned that LBJ was a hero. So I wasn't politically inclined at all. I had never voted. But if you had asked me, you stopped me on the street and you said, are you a Democrat, Republican? I would have said Democrat. And it would have been because of the reasons that I just listed. So I started paying attention in politics when Donald Trump came down the escalator, and which is quite hilariously because I thought this man should never be the president of the United States ever, right? So I don't care where you were in America. I mean, I was on your side with this. Like, no, not this guy. I thought that he was just too boisterous, too New York, and also he was the guy who says you're fired, like too cultural to be the president of the United States. I didn't believe that he was the right person for the job, especially coming off of Obama, the smooth talker. But then something weird started happening where this guy who I thought should not be the president of the United States, rather than saying he shouldn't be the president of the United States because he's not qualified, the media started saying he shouldn't be the president of the United States because he's a racist, a sexist, a homophobe. And I'm thinking, wait a second, this guy has been loved. In the media, they loved this guy. I mean, in every hip hop song I listened to growing up, they wanted to be like Trump. You wanted to end up at Mar-a-Lago. He was a symbol of status and of wealth. So I asked myself an important question, and that question was, is it plausible that Black Americans are now and racism is being used as a theme to turn Black Americans into single issue voters? And the answer is yes. And I started researching, and I fell in love with Thomas Sowell. I mean, it really was a story of falling in love with Thomas Sowell and his books, and he knocked me into reality. And you really can't unsee it. You can't unsee it once you learn the knowledge of how we've been used as single issue voters, you can't unsee it.